Alright, so first and foremost, when we're doing this, we have to talk about the family, and obviously everybody know what a family is. They can say, "Oh, family, you have a family, all of you have a family." And for this exam or for this syllabus, it's very important that you know the definition. No, technically, technically, if you go down to it, so usually people only consider people who are blood related to be their family, according to this syllabus or according to this subject. And yeah, so basically family is a group of people who are related to each other by blood, marriage, or adoption. Now you really have some people out here who only consider them blood to be them family. And let's just say if somebody let's just say maybe you have a sister-in-law or a brother-in-law, you probably say, oh, the man are really my family because they're not related by blood. But technically, once you are related by blood, marriage, or adoption, that person becomes your family. So this is the best definition for you to just memorize, just go in at the exam knowing it, especially on the SSC, the essay on the paper 2 when you have to go write. This would be a good point for sure. Let me say yes, I actually know what the family is as a definition to build up a case and all that stuff. And also it might come by MCQ and I might get a little scenario or something and say Joe and Pam are blah blah blah. Are they a family? And things like that. So at least now you know exactly what a family is by definition. So we're talking about now why is the family important? So basically the family is very important because it provides emotional and financial support and obviously security. Now emotionally people generally or just overall people usually like to be around other people, so that's one. And emotion is a very big part of just how people grow up, especially knowing how to regulate their emotions as they get older, dealing with anger, sadness. So all of these things are learned from the family. Financial support, if parents and other caregivers provide for you security, that sense of feeling safe, and then sense of belonging and identity. Basically, feeling like no matter what happened, you have somewhere to go back to, you know who you are. Even looking at your last name is a sense of identity. Yes, you have a first name, but when you look at your last name, you say, yeah, we know exactly where we belong. We know, say, okay, the Williams family or the Smith family, that's my family, that is where I belong, right? And the thing about families is you go through your entire life with these people. So you don't get to choose a family. You're born coming to this world, your cousin, your mother, your grandma, your grandma. You don't get to choose. You understand? So it gives you that sense of belonging and identity that, listen, this is my crazy family. And another importance of the family is obviously values and moral development. When you grow up, so you know right from wrong. You know what your values are, and when you know what your values are, you're not going to do certain things, right? So going out into society, we know, so okay, when we walk into somewhere, we say good morning, you understand? So you walk in and you say, oh, I'm supposed to say good morning. Those are the things that you learn from within the home, you understand? Basic manners and basic values that says, okay, if we find the money somewhere before return it to the person, values such as do not steal, do not lie, them look at something there, you understand? Because nobody not gonna raise them if you come up and be liar and thief, people call up their name already and I said them a liar and thief, right? So those are the values and moral development, knowing what is right from wrong that you learn from within the home. And then obviously, as I said before, guidance is very important. So most of the time, how a child ends up eventually, how them end up as an adult, their childhood played such a big role into it because of their families. So if them grow up in a very hostile environment where everybody shout and just very vulgar and just no love, don't listen, it's going to be poor to go show up in the child when I'm older. When you see them behave that way, it's because of how them grow up, it's because of them family. So this can help you to realize that okay, when you see people, just know say so is all about them upbringing, how them families stay, because you might see somebody and you might say, oh, actually, I'm gonna leave that next point, but basically, guidance is very important. So when they grow up, they say, oh, me not go to drugs, me not go to this, or just anything that can harm them, or lying and thief and all them something there, then leave them something there alone, and then just do the right thing, right? So basically, being a role model, you have a parents, your grandparents, different people that you can look up to. That is how important the family is, because especially in a society, we don't need cruff. We don't need no cruff and no more waste man or waste woman. We don't need time wasters in society. So that is how the family helps to form all of that stuff, right? And then socialization and learning. So the way how you might meet somebody, it says a lot about their family that they grew up in. No, from their family. If I see some people that just really intelligent, yeah, and you say, wait, why them this intelligent? It could be because of their family. So, for example, if you see somebody and them speak really, really properly, you say, oh, that means within their family, it was straight English, no patwa, no anything. So, your family basically determines how you don't necessarily determine how you're getting up at the end of the day, but it definitely contributes a significant. You understand? So when people get older and you say, oh, they need counseling and all them something there and they need therapy, is because of them family. You understand? So the family can really mess up a person. It can really make or break a person. So socialization, especially from within the family, is super, super, super important. So now we're going to talking about the different types of families. So basically, we have the first one being the nuclear family, and this is one of the ideal households to raise children in because of the equilibrium or the balance or just the security behind it. And the security behind it, this is the type of family where you'd have both parents and their children living together under the same roof. That's a nuclear family. The mother and the father probably married, right? So they don't have to be married, but the best case scenario is that both parents are married and they have kids. But obviously, you have situations where both parents are there, them live with them kids in the same household, but they're not married, and that's their choice or whatever. But obviously, they're committed because them live with each other and take care of them kids, right? So that's why I said that the nuclear family is one of the more ideal households to raise children in, because they have the support from both parents. That's the main point behind the nuclear family and why it's so important. They have the nurturing from the mother, and they have the disciplinarian from the father, and maybe both parents work or maybe only the father work, it don't matter. But the point is that they have both parents playing their role in their life, right? Versus another type of family, which we're gonna mention later on, where you only have one parent to play them role or one caregiver play them role, and the truth is that that will cause a gap, cause a child to feel a gap, and it will affect them later on in life, right? So as we said before, a situation probably common law relationship, meaning that two people must live together. And that goes back to the whole point behind marriage. So different people have different beliefs about marriage. Some people say that marriage is a piece of paper. Some people don't need it. Some people don't want it. Some people don't care. And if two people decide them don't care for it, then that's that. But those who actually care for it, the piece of paper, the marriage, they'll get married and they will have their kids. Now, the next type of family that I think provide a certain level of support would be the extended family. Now, for me, I had the opportunity to grow up part of my life in an extended family, and then the other part in a nuclear family, somewhat, right? Somewhat. And yeah, but basically, my earlier years obviously grew up in an extended family, and being in an extended family, it means that you're living with multiple generations. So it means the grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, different generations living under the same roof, right? So the reason why I think this is so beneficial is because there are different different support systems, right? Because you ever hear the saying that a village raises a child. So having a child in that environment, and yes, let's just say that there's a child, right? And the child live with a mother and him grandmother and him cousin them and him auntie them, and yeah, and maybe brother too. And let's just say that the gap is technically there because the father is not in the child's life, right? But at the same time, because there are so many different people, or even if uncles are living in the same house, right? There are so many people, so many other family members living in the same house that it fills that gap, you understand? So you can be there living under the same roof, and yes, the father is absent, but when you have the support and everything from all the other family members, you don't really feel the gap. Probably the only time the child would feel the gap is when they maybe go out, maybe at school or something, and then somebody bring up and say, "Oh, where your father?" Then they might feel a type of way. But at home, they won't feel the gap because they have their grandparents, probably grandmother, probably five, six, seven cousins, plus auntie, uncle, everybody are live together, so they don't have time to be like, "Oh, we not no father," and yeah. So this is another family type that does provide some level of stability in a sense, because it helps to fill the gap a bit when you have a lot of family members that are showering you with love. So yes. So extended family, that's multiple generations, and then nuclear family, both parents and their children. Okay, so now the single parent family. So usually, if something goes wrong, let's just say two people meet and they fell in love or something and they had a child or they had children, and then somebody decided to leave, maybe infidelity, then they got divorced or them to separate, or maybe even one of the persons in the relationship died. Then that would leave the other parent being a single parent. Now, some people have the misconception that single parents are only mothers, which that is not the case. Fathers can be single parents too, as in some cases maybe the mother died, or maybe the mother cheated, or maybe the mother just don't. Because technically, if a separation would take place, most people would expect that the child would go with the mother and then just go visit the father. But in some cases, the mother doesn't care for the child as much, and we say, "Oh, they step the child," and so the father would be the one to take up most of the responsibility for the child and say, "Okay, in that situation, that father becomes a single father because the mother is absent, or the mother don't want to pitney, mother just have the pitney and just give to the father and say, "Me done," right? So in some cases that does happen too, but that's what really characterizes a single parent family, and this is not the best family to raise a child in, because obviously the absence of one parent, that means that, for example, if the child is with their mother, and let's just say the mother is more nurturing, more caring, then the child probably grow up spoiled because they never have no father for feel like discipline them and say, "Don't do this, don't do that," right? So the child might come out a certain type of way, or feel entitled, or feel even less than, maybe he or she have self-esteem issues later on in life because they realize, oh, other people have two parents and they only have one parent, right? And that is a gap that that child will probably feel for their entire life, right? And maybe when they grow up, they get therapy, or just find a way to deal with it. But that's really what characterizes a single parent family. Then you have the blended family, and basically it's when two families come together, right? So whether the parents are divorced or then widow, or maybe they're not even married or anything like that, but maybe, yeah, let's just say divorced or widowed or whatever, and the two families come together. So you have step parents, step siblings, half siblings. So let's just say, for example, maybe a woman marries somebody who has children, right? So let's just say, for example, a woman, she don't have no pitney, she married to a man who have maybe three children, right? Maybe they married before. Then that becomes a blended family. Or it could be the case where the woman have 2 kids, the man have 2 kids, they both get married, and that's a blended family. And the best description of this family is, I would recommend watching the movie Blended with we call it Adam Sandler, with the lady and her 2 sons them, and Adam Sandler in the movie with, oh, name Jim, I think I Jim name not the movie, but basically he had 3 girls and she had 2 boys. And I think that movie explained the blended family really well, because it showed the gap where um the mistakes that the mother was making in raising her 2 boys, because the father never did run much. So it shows that she never did really understand what they were going through, especially because the older one that grew up and some things did happen. And then even with the father, with his teenage daughter and all these stuff start coming and him not understand. And she, yeah, but basically watch the movie. But that movie basically explains the blended family really, really well. So that would basically explain it really, really well. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the childless family, and basically this type of family would be, for example, a couple who maybe they just get married or something and they don't have any kids, right? So that would be a childless family, meaning that the couple does not have any children, right? So that would be a childless family, and this could be due to maybe career, maybe both persons are young, they want to focus on their career, they want to travel, they want to explore, and so they cannot put off the whole child business until maybe later on in life, right? And then we have the grandparent family, where basically this is the family where the children are raised by their grandparents, and usually in situations like this can be a situation where maybe the mother or the father, maybe both of them decide to them not take care of no pitney and them go about them business, or maybe the parent passed away and the grandmother have to take care of the pitney, or it can be just different reasons, maybe migration, to maybe the parents gone abroad and them send back money and them leave the child with the grandparents for keep, or yeah, different reasons, but basically um different reasons. But just know that the grandparent, whether the grandmother, the grandfather, or both, raise the children in this type of family. And then the last type of family we're going to talk about is the sibling family household. And basically, this is a household where the older sibling or siblings care for the younger siblings, right? So it means that the sibling play that motherly role, or that sibling play that, or both motherly and fatherly role, because the parents are not there. And this can be due to migration, maybe death, maybe different reasons, or maybe the parents just leave them and decide to them not to care nobody, right? Abandon them, right? So in that family, you gotta have the older sibling. Maybe that sibling would have been like maybe 25, and then take care of his or her younger siblings, maybe like 10 or 6 or 5, younger, much younger. So that's the type of family that a sibling family household would kind of look like, right? So now let's talk about some challenges that a family faces. And before we go through this list, there is one on here that I never mentioned, and basically when I make an edit, I feel like I'm gonna try add it here. Oh no, but like not right good, but you get the point. We could add it about top, but this is what was not on the list. I don't really like right, because this thing is not for me at all, the writing. But basically migration, right? So migration is not on this list, but it's a very important reality, especially in the Caribbean and in Jamaica, because you know that in some families, we don't want to say most, but some families, migration is a big thing, especially to like UK, Canada, US, right? So the parents leave, them go abroad, work money, send back money to take care of the kids, them, right? So migration would be a challenge that families face, because it separates the family. The mother there foreign, the child here Jamaica. You understand? right? And even though they aren't physically there, they do provide financially. Maybe they talk a lot on the phone or whatever, but that is definitely a challenge that families face, migration. Now, let's get into the other challenges that family might face. Now, infidelity and divorce, both of them kind of go hand in hand, right? And as a matter of fact, most of the things on this list can lead to divorce, literally. If we check number 3, 4, 5, 6, all of these things can lead to divorce and idea. But basically, infidelity is basically cheating by one of the persons in the relationship, and then the other person decide to leave, and that is where the divorce comes in, right? And even if the persons are not married, infidelity can still happen, and the person decide to leave them, right? If they were common law and maybe they found out that the person cheat, they can still leave. That's still infidelity, right? But for those who were married, that would result in a divorce, right? Communication issues can result in a divorce as well, meaning that when one of the persons, when one person speaks, the other one don't listens, because that's how a relationship is supposed to work. When one speaks, you listen. So it's listen, understand, right? It's supposed to be equal, right? So maybe the woman, she should speak and maybe the man not listening, or maybe the man speak and the woman is not listening. So communication issues. Like for example, if they have disagreements, they cannot come to a consensus because they aren't communicating efficiently or effectively. So that can literally result in a divorce, and divorce splits up families, you understand? So it means if a divorce happens and the couple, they had kids, they had 2, 3, 4, 5 kids, and when that divorce happens, that puts the child in a bad situation, because now mother gonna live somewhere else, father gonna live somewhere else, and then the child is going to be left in the middle. Imagine the child used to live in with both mother and father under the same roof. Divorce happens, and now the child has to go back and forth between mother and father, two different homes. And especially if new partners come into the equation where the child said, oh, the mother have somebody new, the father have somebody new, it can be very hard for the child to accept, and that can be a challenge that the family faces. Now, domestic abuse. So basically, violence. Once, maybe in most cases, majority of the cases, where if the men should abuse the women physically, like domestic abuse, maybe, or say, oh, they love them or whatever, and then they hit them. Those are the type of things that is definitely a charge. So that's criminal business, but that's a charge, right? So usually, like divorce, they would consider those things like civil or whatever, but domestic abuse, that's definitely a charge that involve the police now, right? Because it's serious. So domestic abuse, that can definitely lead to divorce if the person is brave enough to leave, and it does bring police into the mix. Now, health issues. For example, let's just say that one of the persons or even the child find out that the child have cancer or something like that. How you think the family is supposed to function, knowing that the child have cancer, knowing that their child, is going to die, and there's nothing that they can do about it. They tried all the treatments, they do everything, and there's nothing they can do to save the child. How you think a family is supposed to cope with that? Or what if the cancer was in one of the patients, in one of the parents? How you think the child's supposed to cope with that? How you think the other partner supposed to cope with that, right? And even in some cases, people will divorce or they will leave the person because of health issues, because them say, oh, my finance, you have this, or maybe the person did hide the facts that them have maybe HIV or something, and them say, listen, I find out now, I'm gonna leave. So those are different challenges that family can face, and one of the big ones, and I feel like the financial aspect can lead to all of these things, because you see, when money comes into the equation, people act different. That's the honest truth. People behave differently when money comes into the equation. So you can have a family, and let's just say that the both parents under pressure, right? There's no money, right? School fee for pay, book for buy for pitney, uniform for make, lunch money for get them, and it really come down. Now let's just say, for example, the stress that get to the man. the man start abuse the wife, right? And then communication issues, so everything can literally lead from that and lead to a divorce, to separation of the family. Now we have substance abuse, where maybe the person had the drugs, one partner is doing drugs, and it's a big problem because they cannot stop. They're basically addicted, and them take the money. Them, for example, then get money, they take it to buy weed, and for example, them get the mortgage money, and take the mortgage money, buy weed. Them take the light bill money, go buy weed or buy marijuana, nicotine, heroin, morphine, whatever the case might be. Any money them get, them take it buy weed. No, and is the fact say them light bill money them take buy weed, light bill, water bill, picnic school fee, where you know you did have and you took it by weed. So that is when the problem really comes into the relationship, because whoever take important money, right, and go spend it on, that means that you cannot control yourself, right? There's no discipline, and that usually wrecks the family completely, because whoever take the mortgage money, the rent money, the light bill money, different things, and you just use it for that purpose, and then the family go get hungry now, right? So things like that can really challenge a family. Alcohol abuse. So the person that drink, them is a heavy drinker, them drink and drive, them just come home drunk, and the drunk kind of always come home drunk, they cannot communicate efficiently, they must always drunk out of it. And honestly, that's a lot for people to cope with, the other partner in the relationship. If you're really the person that come home drunk, like them I get tired of that. And even the kids, every time they want to talk to them father or their mother, them just drunk, they're not even them in a great mind. So basically, all of those things can challenge a family. Verbal abuse, so shouting, can't even pronounce the word, but basically words that bring down people. Derogatory, we can't even pronounce it right. Derogatory words will bring down other people, or bring down like the demeaning words, right? So for example, I was a shout and a yell, good for nothing, and whatever to the child, or good for nothing, you can't do this to the wife or to the husband, you're worthless, you can't do nothing. All of those things will be verbal abuse. Physical abuse, maybe physically hitting the kids now, right? Physically hitting the kids can be another challenge that the family faces. And physically hitting the kids now, that would pass the point of just discipline, meaning say if it's discipline, you slap them with a hand, or discipline, you might use a belt, pan and bam bam. But when it gets to the point where you take up chair, you take up hot oil, you take up fire, and you threaten to light people on fire, and that is where it get to the hand. And in a situation like that, anything physical like that, police have to get in. Wow. Okay, so now the role of each family member in the family, and basically these are the traditional roles. And there's a reason why we say that these are the traditional roles, because later on you're going to see exactly why I say these are the traditional roles. So basically these roles are changing, right? So these roles that traditionally we knew it to be this, later on we realize it have become other things. Roles are getting mixed up, matched, blended, so there's no defined role anymore. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Right, so traditionally we know the father to be the protector, provider, and the disciplinarian. Protector meaning that the father in the home should technically be that security for the mother, for the kids. Then we know say okay, the father go protect. If somebody break in and come in the house, the father there for protect them as a protector, right? That's security. Because a child cannot, and it leads back to the whole drinking and drugs and everything, because if a child every day see them father coming drunk, or them just hype on weed or cracker or whatever, them not gonna feel that security. So that's the traditional role of the father, to be the protector, provider, most times providing financially, that is what they mean. And disciplinarian meaning that they're the one that keeps the children in check, basically, right? So maybe the mother would be certain things would be passed on to the father and say okay, discipline them so they know not to do this anymore, and different things like that. And then also for the mother, traditionally, especially the role of the mother is one of the main changing roles that we have now in society, because traditionally we know the mother to be the caregiver, nurturer, stay at home, take care of the kids, give birth, raise them. That's what we traditionally know women to do. But nowadays we see that kind of changed a bit, right? Now the sister slash brother, right? So sister slash brother. So both brothers and sisters, their role is really to set an example for their younger siblings, right? And also to nurture their younger siblings. So most times, children will follow what they see. So for example, the older sister, the older brother is probably maybe 16, 17. They're older, so they set a better example. So if the younger children to them are to lie and so do all of these things that don't necessary, then it will pass on to them because they might see it, they might learn it. No, how about the older sister, the older brother set a better example, so listen, instead of you do all of that, you can go to school, do your work and whatnot, right? And then you also have the nurturing aspect where, let's just say, if the mother absent, the big sister might step in and also play that caregiver role. I might cook, or I might take care of the kids them, or if them really young, she might bathe them, or the brother might bathe them. So different things like that. So sometimes, especially the older siblings, they will take on the role of the parents if the parents are absent. Maybe them gone for a weekend or whatever the case may be, or maybe sometime they help out. Even if the parents are present, they might do it sometime, right? So that's really the role of the siblings, the older sibling, like the brother and the sister, and then the grandparents. So the traditional role, and obviously we mentioned before that in some cases grandparents end up actually being the main caregiver for the children or the child because of different reasons, maybe death, maybe the parents just decide to them not want to pick and them leave. They have different reasons, or maybe migration. But the grandparents traditionally, their role is to pass on traditions and values, especially for me when me did younger. When we used to live with my grandmother back then, most of the time, like anytime you go for sit down with her, talk with her, she gonna tell you about the past, she gonna tell you about some things, right? So that is how traditions and values get passed on because they're like history books. Grandparents. So grandparents are like history books. When you sit down and you talk with them, they might tell you them whole life story plus some, right? Plus some. They might tell you a lot of things. Not even just about themselves. Them tell you about everybody what them did know there in that time period as well. And then tell you everything about everybody. But basically that's how traditions and values get passed on, right? And you also know your history behind that too. Because some things, maybe me just born and me there, I mean, never knows all these things that happened back then, right? With within our family, within the family, and then my grandma would say, "Oh, so so and so they did this, or this is how everything did play out." I may say, "Really, this is all like a movie," but basically that's the traditional role of parents, they pass on traditions and values. So it's not just on the parents alone to instill values into the children. It's up to the grandparents too, because for example, the parents leave in them, or the grandparents and say, "Listen, make them stay with you for the week. Them are gonna teach them are gonna make them learn different values and said, listen, make sure you have manners, those things, right? So the grandparents do play a role in the whole values and morals, because literally remember this. The grandparents are literally who them have the parents so the parents have you. So if you look on it like that, it makes sense. So then the roles of the family in society. So basically, we can just start with procreation. So that's probably the main role. So reproduction is very important to have the next generation. So that's one of the main roles of the families in society. Then we said socialization. So basically, we said before that the way how somebody act when them grow up, it has a lot to do with their families when they were younger, right? So it all depends on the household that they grew up in, because that is how they are socialized. So for example, if you go somewhere you see somebody and then just cause up peer bad word, everywhere you go them cause up peer bad word, left, right and center, you know the type of family where them come from, because that is how they were socialized. For you cause up bad peer bad word every day, man, you and night, right? So that's how socialization works. So simple manners and the way they talk to people and respecting elders and stuff like that is learned within the home. right? And then you have education. So basically, the education aspect, families do have the responsibility of sending their children to school because it's important to read and write. Literacy is very important. It helps them to become more successful in society, because imagine going around as an adult, or maybe later on in life you can't read, you can't write. It does become challenging, right? So if that happened in the previous generation, it's the family's job now to make sure that the next generation can read and write. So the next generation don't have literacy issues, that they can read, that they can go to college, that they can contribute to society, right? So the families are the foundation, right? So even if we go to college and stuff like that, the family have to be the backing and say push them and say do this, do that, and even to send them to college. So people have to save up money and say, okay, may save up for the college and all them something there, right? So the role of the family is very important in society because it literally determines how the person are going to turn out. Because as I said before, if somebody come from a family, all they know cause about already, that's all they are gonna expect from that person, right? And if the family don't send their kids to school, or maybe even poverty, different things that affect the family, that is another reason too. So just know that another challenge that the family can face is poverty, right? So just say poverty and the kids not go to school, they never learn, and basically the family is very important in society, right? So it all goes back to that, right? Very important.